of color in Palm Beach County. That's cocowire.net if you want to know what's happening here with us in Palm Beach County. And as we do on this show and on cocochats.net, as I say every Wednesday, we will continue to tell the stories of our communities, of the African diaspora, which, as you are aware, I'm sure, are African Americans, Caribbean blacks, and Native Africans, so that we all get a better sense of how rich and interesting our communities are. Especially today, the day after Election Day. That's because there was lots happening here in our communities the last few months. From the pandemic, of course, to George Floyd, to lots and lots and lots of concerns about voting by mail, about voting early, about voting in person, about voting, period. The voting data for Palm Beach County has been released, I don't know if y'all have heard, with Biden winning Palm Beach County and much of the rest of South Florida, but losing all of the rest of Florida, including, the entire state has been given to his opponent. Today's guest, you see I didn't say what I normally say, okay, Miss Jillian. Today's guest, though, ladies and gentlemen, Alfred Fields is the president of the Alpha Educational Foundation, a nonprofit arm of the West Palm Beach chapter of the Alpha Phi Alpha fraternity. But more than that, he is the king of the vote. And I say that, ladies and gentlemen, because from ex-felons to millennials to, well, all of us, Mr. Fields has been pushing the ballot really hard. This season, for instance, Mr. Fields and the Alphas have had sign-waving events on street corners in the hood, and they hosted an event called It's a New Day with young people late last month, pushing the fact that those young people whom the event referred to, and I quote, the young and the bold, that they're seeking change. But in a sense, he and the Alphas are not alone in that. Think about the voting-related events that have been happening all across here, and I'm just talking locally. Just last week, for instance, we had on the show two organizers of an event called Black Men Stand Up, Each One Take One, where they wanted to see 500 black men vote on that day at that early voting location, and for each to bring another black man with them. And there was Souls to the Polls, which was organized by the Palm Beach County Clergy Alliance, and Protest to the Polls, which was hosted by Riviera Beach City Councilman Doug Lawson, who, by the way, is Jamaican. And there was even an event called Convoy to the Polls, which was held on October 25th in Boynton Beach and was organized by Ray Whiteley, who created the nonprofit called Black Votes Matter and is also of Jamaican descent. But the question for me, though, is simple. What is this all about? Why are we pushing voting like this? And why now? Does it have anything to do with the pandemic, which landed here in March and is becoming more powerful in this country because of, as we're told, how the federal government is handling it? Or is it in response to the racial injustice and police brutality in communities that the George Floyd death raised to global levels when protests when he was killed back in May? Or is it that we just want to ensure that we get a new president? Let's find out. Mr. Fields of the Alpha Educational Foundation, thank you for coming on to Coco Chats with us today, sir.
Well, thank you for having me.
I appreciate it.
Thank you.
And let me ask you this question first. Have you voted yet?
Yes, I have voted in every election since I was 18 years old.
Really?
Yes. First time I voted, I was at Florida State University.
Wow.
In 1984.
You remember?
Yes, I do. I stood in line for about an hour at a church and voted.
Wow. Was it a black church? Just curious.
Actually, it wasn't.
Okay. But they didn't.
But it was near the Florida State campus. So.
But they didn't have their fists in the air and frowns on their faces when you came there to vote, right?
No.
Okay.
But it wouldn't have mattered if they did.
Oh, why?
Because I was going to vote anyway.
Okay. But let me ask you now, here locally now, in this election, how did you vote? Did you vote early? Did you vote by mail? Did you just vote yesterday or what?
I voted in the early voting portion of the election at Wells Recreation Center in Riviera Beach.
Oh, that early voting site, yeah.
Yes, and the reason I did so is because I wanted to ensure that my vote was in and I didn't delay anyone by voting the day of the election, because the more of us voted early that had an opportunity, the less the lines would be and the more opportunity people would get out and not be discouraged by long lines. So I encouraged as many people as I could to vote early or vote by mail if you are afraid of what was going on in the world today with this pandemic. So.
But then we have our current president, which is what, I want to say something different. But, we have him saying voting early, voting by mail is that, thumbs down. Like he's going to push back against it legally. I mean, so I was just kind of curious why. I mean, they would, I voted yesterday and they were practicing social distancing as they did during the primary. I guess all I'm saying is because our orange president was pushing back against voting early and voting, by mail and stuff.
Only because he was afraid of too many people voting. The more people that voted, the worse his chances were of being reelected. And he understood that. So, and of course, with the percentage of vote that we make up was enough to put his opponent over the top, which we have. Right. We may not have been successful in Florida, but in Michigan, in Wisconsin, in Arizona. Nevada. And wait a minute. Wait a minute. Pennsylvania ain't done yet. So it ain't over. It ain't over till all the votes are counted. And so regardless of how we may feel here locally in Florida, we should not be discouraged because we got out and did what we needed to do in Palm Beach County. And we spread the word throughout the state and throughout the country to get out and vote. And as long as we did what we could, you got to understand, we only make up a small percentage of the population in this country. So we couldn't put him over the top by ourselves. And unfortunately, we understood what happened down south in Dade County with the significant number of Cubans who voted for Donald Trump, which voted for Hillary Clinton in the last election. That might have been enough if he would have gotten the same amount out of them. But anyway, that being set aside, we are serving an eviction notice to the White House today. so there will be a new resident. So all of the people out there that are listening, be encouraged. Our votes do count and they do matter. And so we need to remember, vote in every election, not just the presidential election, because the persons that we elect on a yearly basis to office affect our lives more directly than the one in the White House. So as important as the White House election is, our local houses are, our city councils and our county government. They are very, very important, and we need to get out and vote like we vote every 4 years. We need to vote like that every year because we have races that are being won by 10% of the population on an off-year election. When we say off-year, meaning it's a year that there's not a presidential election. Yeah.
So give us a sense, Mr. Fields, of why you think there is such a push this year to vote. I mean, it's been crazy. I get a text every day on my phone.
Well, and it's
so why do you
this
think it
year
is?
Because there was a renewed effort to make sure that we voted to the extent that we voted when Obama ran for president. We turned out in numbers that were unbelievable. We were voting 80-something% of registered black voters. And those numbers dropped down to in the 60%, I think, when Hillary ran
next year, in 2016
for president. And so we knew we could do better. And so that was the focus throughout this country, because for whatever reason, we got apathy and we sat back on our laurels and said, well, we had one black president and it may not have gotten everything we thought we got out of it, but things don't change overnight. We incrementally changed things in this country. As soon as slavery was over, we didn't have the right to vote. it changed over time. And even when they said we had the right to vote, you still see that they're trying to take it away right now. So we have to exercise our right to vote. We have to make sure we stay engaged, and we have to make sure we stay on top of the issues. And issues don't happen only in the year you vote for a president. It happens every year.
And, speaking of, ensuring that we have our right to vote, that reminds me of, I think that was last year when you Alphas had that conference when y'all discussed ex-felons and their voting rights and how to seek to kill the poll tax that the state legislators came up with after Florida residents passed Amendment 4. But I'm just wondering, why did y'all do that? Why did y'all have that ex-felon thing last year talking about their right to vote? Were y'all thinking about what's going to be happening here in 2020?
Absolutely. And we're thinking about what's going to happen in 2021, 2022, because there's elections every year.
Yeah.
And if we don't start planning for them now, we'll never be ready for them tomorrow. And the goal is get as many as we can registered now for 2024.
Right.
Because if we wait till 2024, then we got to do all that work in 2024 and encourage them to get out to vote instead of registering them now. The day after the election, we should start registration campaigns. Start registering our young people as soon as they get out of high school or while they're in high school.
The eighth graders would be the next voting block of young people. So we got to get those eighth graders by the time they turn 18 and their last year of high school. That's the group that we're looking at, those eighth graders from this year and up.
And one of the things I did when I was in high school, I was involved in student government, student council, understanding
being elected in high school,
understanding then what
the process
is and voting is all about and how you get to change things. Because even in high school, students have power too, and a lot of them don't understand it. Because a student can change the way things are done on a campus if they band together, understanding the power of being together. And that's what we have to continue to understand as a people, that when we're together, we can make a difference. We can change things. But when we're like, oh, my vote doesn't count, what difference is it going to make? Well, it may not make a difference to you and what's going on today, but tomorrow, those changes will happen if we continue to push the envelope. All these marches that have been taking place over the last year.
I mean, that's been a lot.
Think about all those people. If we would have got those people to get out and register to vote, those young people who were marching, if we could have got the turnout from them in the voting time. I
think we had a lot of dreamers in those groups also.
Yes.
I think we had a lot of dreamers who got out there.
And a lot of them actually registered to vote. But the problem we have is they register and then they don't vote.
And see, that's what I was going to ask you too about, the Men of Tomorrow and those young people that y'all work with, that y'all mentor. I mean, because I don't know about y'all, but I hear young people say all the time that they don't believe that their vote counts and they don't see the value in voting. I'm just curious. I mean, do y'all push voting to the MOTs, and then what do you hear from them, the Men of Tomorrow, the young high school men?
Yes, we do, and we talk about the importance of voting. We talk about getting registered to vote. We try to get them involved in the processes of voting and being and seeing it firsthand, because as simple as it sounds, if one additional person voted in every city in this country, you're talking about a couple 100,000 votes. Okay. One vote can make a difference.
But when y'all talk to those young men, do they push back? I mean, do they say, what y'all talking about? This voting ain't important? I mean, what do y'all, I'm just curious.
Well, until you get involved in the process, most people do. And when you're in high school, you're saying, well, when am I going to ever use this? And so the thing is you keep saying it over and over, and hopefully, each time you say it and each time you show them this process, a little bit more will sink in. And that's the thing, repetition. That's why I say we can't expect someone to vote every 4 years when we haven't encouraged them to vote every year leading up to it. Get in the habit of voting. Where's your precinct? You shouldn't be looking for your precinct the week of the election. And you should know where it's at a year before, because you should have voted in the election the year before. And so those are the things we need to get in the habit of as a people, is voting on a regular basis. And most people don't know. And the reason you were getting those texts and people were getting texts, because there's a record of when you vote and how often you vote. It's public record. So
yeah, but my telephone number is public record too.
Yeah.
Yes.
So they give you the parties. I'm a super voter, right? So you have that. You have that label, a super voter, because they know that I indulge in every single election cycle.
Right.
So my number is there, my address, and everybody in my household, that address is there. You get a whole list printed out, and you go down, and they move from phone calls to now text messages, which is everything, emails.
And my son is in South Korea.
Wow.
In the military.
And
he voted. He voted all the way from South Korea.
Wow. But was he getting texts on his phone about voting and stuff too?
I don't know about that part.
Okay.
But he
knew
he had to vote, because we instilled that in them, is that voting is a part of our right that we will take advantage of in this country.
And what's so interesting about it, it's just astounding to me how many people of color, today even, how many people, the white women, us people of color, had to do so much to get the right to vote, 100 years ago or whenever it was. Yet the young people today are like, voting doesn't matter.
Yeah, you had John Lewis, who said, "Let's go get in some good trouble."
Yeah,
I mean,
they were literally being beaten across the head, some till death, for us to have the right to vote, marching miles upon miles, doing the things to lay the groundwork, because they weren't allowed. You're talking about a poll tax. What they're doing to the felons now was done to every black person.
Could we clarify that?
Sure.
Because we need to tell the truth about our history. It wasn't just every black person. It's every person that was not white. We need to tell that story.
Yes.
Well,
it was colored people.
Well,
we need to stop stressing on just blacks, because the Latinos couldn't do it.
Yes.
The Asians couldn't do it. And we've created an environment where we forget that they were part of us back then. It was colored folks.
Absolutely.
Well, but don't forget though, too, now, white women couldn't vote either.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
It was all
and
about
out of that
white
came
men.
out the feminist movement and all of that. So
Yeah.
we got to tell that story and keep pushing that narrative.
Absolutely. You're absolutely correct. The whole story was we couldn't do it by ourselves.
Right.
And we still can't. And that's what I said earlier. We're not in this by ourselves, because we're such a small part of the population in this country. We still have to align ourselves with groups that have some of the same interests that we have, and make sure we vote, and we can control some of what goes on. We may not have the biggest part of the pie, but let's get a piece of the pie.
Okay.
And that's the key. Until you get what you want, you keep taking a small piece. And every time you get a small piece and you add it to the other small piece, that piece gets bigger. And that's what happens with our right to vote. It kept growing, and now it's in the reverse, because you have certain groups of people that are seeing that we are aligning ourselves with people that are looking out for us more, and they want to remove that and take it away.
Right.
And what's interesting, you touched on, other people of color who, have just gotten the right to vote.
That's what they teach in the
But
kids in
I
school.
cannot let go of this fact that I keep hearing about Hispanics, that they're the largest minority group in this country.
Which means they're not a minority.
No.
And we need to take them out that category.
But every 30 seconds in this country, one of them becomes of age to vote and to register to vote, to turn 18. Every 30 seconds, a Hispanic in this country turns 18 and can register to vote. And that is just like blowing my mind.
Well, they need to come out of the status of being minority.
Well, they are a minority when it comes to the majority.
The majority
in this country,
right?
And that's where our current president, respect the office and maybe not the man. So, and you'll get that later. Respect the office, not necessarily the man.
The orange president.
But he understood that Hispanics are the fastest growing minority in this country. Why? Because so many of them are still coming in this country, where we have been limited to the a-hole countries where we can't get in this country. We can't get in here because we've been blockaded by water, so to speak. They're coming across the border where there's a canal. And so,
well, they're allowed to come across,
and they're allowed in a greater number to come across than we are. So they are afraid. And I've had the conversation with multiple people that are Caucasians. I'll just call it what it is. And I had to tell them, look, Trump's going after the Hispanics first. But who's number 2 and who's number 3? People of color was number 2 after he finished trying to get rid of a bunch of them. And number 3 was the Jewish. Don't fool yourself to think he was all in favor of Jewish people because he has a Jewish son-in-law.
Right.
So I tell people straightforward, that's what's going on in this country.
His daddy's still an ex-Nazi.
Yes, he is. And he, anyway, respect the office and not necessarily the man.
Right, correct. I noticed that they've shifted from calling him president, because, the first 2 years or so, they were calling him president, and they've just called him by his name now. Before.
Trump.
Yeah.
Or as I want to call him, Rump. Oh, sorry. I saw a sign out that had the T crossed off, and I was just like, that's perfect. But anyway, I want to go back to the voting push that y'all were doing. And the Alphas are one in a long list of organizations and nonprofits and government agencies that have joined together and created this Palm Beach County Voting Squad, which has a lot of fraternities and sororities in it, and the Black Chamber of Commerce of Palm Beach County, the Urban League of Palm Beach County, the League of Women Voters of Palm Beach County, even the YWCA. All of them are involved in that Palm Beach County Voting Squad, including the Alphas. So tell me about that organization and why y'all got involved. I mean, is it brand new like this year? Because I've never heard of it before.
To my understanding, it was brand new. Janine Wester, who is very involved in our community, she was one of the major forces behind this organization and bringing them all together and trying to get everybody on the same page, calendar-wise, what was going on, sharing information.
Yeah.
So she was the force behind it. To my knowledge, I was involved in a few of the meetings that went on, and basically she helped put together a calendar of who was having this March event, who was having this voter driving
protest to the polls. So this organization was to bring everybody together, and I can tell you this brought a lot of synergy to what was going on in the county. It seems like
you had the Divine Nine, which is all of the traditional Black Greek organization, college organizations that were involved.
Just about every one of them.
And then a bunch of other Black organizations as well as other Black.
Yeah, like that League of Women Voters of Palm Beach County, and I was just
so there was a lot of events that were going on that was being shared from one organization to the next, so we can try to help support each other. Which was very very good, because there was something always going on in the county, throughout the county, because this is a county effort. It's been astounding. I hope and pray that hope that it will continue beyond yesterday, that we don't wait until 6 months before the next election.
So I want to say this to you. Last week we had Councilman Doug Lawson and
Attorney Richard Riles.
Riles here, and we spoke about the state of Black Broward. We need to have the state of Black Palm Beach. I'm just saying.
That's an organization?
No, it is every year. You have the State of the Union address.
Right.
And Dale Wholeness, who's the mayor of Broward County, started hosting, I think about 5 years ago, the State of Black Broward. And so you're the my proposal, I put it on the table last week, and Riles said yes, and Doug Lawson said yes, and I think we need to come up with a State of Black Palm Beach.
That would be an excellent thing to do. and something that's done annually. And the thing is we're so spread out in Palm Beach County. We're not. There's no major concentration of areas of people of color except for in like Riviera Beach and Delray, and then there's pockets scattered about. I think a centralization and a group like what was formed would be great to be continued year after year instead of every 4 years.
And so what does that group do?
Here, Jimmy.
Oh,
hang on. No, well, the state of Black Broward is just a state of a union. So what Deal Wholeness does is bring together people who are in positions such as yourself, such as the commissioners, the police chiefs, and people who are in positions of power to discuss their different agendas and how the agenda could move their community forward for the next year. So it's an annual event. He does it down at the African Heritage Arlac down in Broward, and it really you allow the communities to stand up and talk about some of their concerns from the different cities that's represented by those officials there, and people bring together, I want this on a platform. I need this addressed this year. My community, we don't have enough water. If we have lead in the water, whatever the issues are.
The issue is.
Right. But that's the state of our community. And then that platform, that agenda is put together and it's sent to our legislatures. And, so it's just a caucus, sort of like a caucus.
I would be interested in getting information on the person that's leading that one so we could actually have a conversation.
It might be Jillian Smart.
So that is one thing we need to really consider doing.
So going forward, Mr. Fields, what do you wanting to accomplish? With with what y'all have done,
I mean, one of the slogans that we have for Alpha Phi Alpha is a voteless people is a hopeless people.
Love that.
And that's one of our projects that we work on every year. Mm-hmm. And so I'm hoping that we can continue to do what we did this year every year. Because unless we get in a habit of doing what we did this year, we fall into the habit of not doing it. And so it becomes more work every year because you got to get geared up all over again every 4 years. But if we continue to do it every year, I think it'll be easier and I wouldn't have to work it so hard.
But what I always find so interesting is, people, associate voting with change. But then all of the people who were elected were like the same, incumbents. So change?
So that was my topic, right?
What?
Hold those people accountable. It doesn't matter if you voted for them or not. They represent you. They represent your district. So what you have to do, if you have a problem, like I-95, if you go through Boca, they're fixing I-95. Why isn't it being fixed in Lake Worth and Lantana? Why is it not being fixed in West Palm Beach, Yeah. And we hold our representatives accountable. And you call them.
And that's what you have to. And another thing that we fail to do is serve on some of these boards that are not elected.
Yeah,
I serve on the planning board in the city of West Palm Beach.
Districting.
And so we have to make sure that we encourage each other
to be
a part of these boards where decisions are made.
Yeah.
I have a question for you. Do the members of these board, is there some sort of grooming mentorship? So each member now has like a young person from their area that they got to groom and bring them in so they're part of the process. That's just
typically there isn't.
Right,
so,
it should be.
Yes.
Oh, shit.
22nd.
Hot flash.
14. Me too, girl. But I have a hoodie on. It's a lot.
I mean, this middle age is crazy.
7, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. You're on.
All right, everyone. We've got a couple of more minutes before we leave. Thank y'all for tuning in to Coco Chats today with me, Marion Dozier, and our guest today, Alfred J. Fields, the president of the Alpha Educational Foundation here in Palm Beach County. Tell us how we can reach you if someone wants to talk to you about what you're doing.
I can be reached by email, ajfields0102@gmail.com. So if you have any questions about our Men of Tomorrow program, Alpha Educational Foundation, please give me an email.
Or, of course, he's on social media because he's a millennial like Miss Jillian.
Yes, you can find me.
But yeah, and then on the Alphas have a website too, Delta Lambda .com. All right, Miss Jillian, thank you so much.
Well, thank you so much. I appreciate being here.
It's always a pleasure. Always a good show. Yes, say bye-bye, Marion.
All right, bye-bye, Marion.
All right, thank you again. I appreciate it.